Alright, hello travelers. Welcome to the stream. I have here a very special guest. You'll notice that he is occupying my chair today. This is my good friend Marshall. Marshall, would you like to introduce yourself?
This bug's been flying around my head and had me on this seat for like 30 minutes at this point.
He's obviously a very willing participant. I swear. Probably.
She can say whatever she can say what she wants, but I mean, I'm not gonna leave just yet. But I mean, semi-willing.
I mean, look, the door's locked for no particular reason. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, fair enough. It's not like I even have the collagen to make an escape or anything.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Just, hang out, vibe. Hydra asked, how did you stumble across the cabin, Marshall?
I mean, kind of the same as everyone else. I was just enjoying it was storming out, so I was enjoying some of that moistness in the air. When I kind of lost track of where my footing was, stumbled down a hill, and then just fell through this door that happened to be open into this nice, comfy little seat. And then you closed the door and tied me up.
See? Just like everybody. It's fine. It's fine. Well, let me start with a quick round of cabin news before we get started on our conversation for today. For starters, because I am a drink goblin of every quantity, I currently have a sparkling water, a regular water, and some banana nut muffin herbal tea. Marshall, what do you got to drink today?
I didn't know that we were getting drinks out. So I'm just gonna reach over here. I have a half-drunk Gatorade, and a Sam Adams bottle, and some apple cider vinegar, apparently.
There we go. Prime. Well, we have lots of drinks going around.
We have variety here, which I'm now bringing to the table.
Exactly, which is great. Okay, so I have Sam Adams mods take his ankles. No, he's allowed to drink what he wants, even if it's wrong.
Dan, how dare you? Dark lagers are the best, and I will not handle the slander.
All right. And then today's project, I don't know if I've made a ton of progress since last time. I can't remember. I think just one change of colors, but we're currently working on my grandfather's blanket a little bit while we're talking. Because I wanted to make sure Toast can't hear anything but playing D&D. Love you, love you too, Toast. And I'm currently working on trying to change color. I'm trying to work on my grandfather's blanket, trying to get it done before Christmas. And this is all I have of this yellow yarn left. Got a bunch more next to me, but we're gonna try to get through this while Marshall is talking.
Yes, well, I'm regaling you all with the. I think how you specifically voiced it to me was spooky, scary, like Puritans for Thanksgiving season.
Yes.
Is how you wanted it to be.
Yep, spooky, scary. Yep. Get everybody in the mood for some Thanksgiving fun, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
Right? I would consider this as fun stuff for Ookie Spooky. Stuff for Thanksgiving. Close enough. Well, then our also congratulations on being the very first guest on the cabin.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here. It's very exciting to finally get to see this happen.
I know. We've been talking about it since before I decided to stream, actually.
Yeah,
Oh,
you'd mentioned that. I actually was. You said that a story I had written for you was actually inspiration for a couple of bits of the area, and that after I'd given it to you, you're like, I want you to be the first guest on my on when I do these talk show kind of things.
yeah. No, it legitimately. So, if you all don't know, Marshall is a fabulous writer. He does great short stories, and he wrote a short story for me, and it was kind of a really like the perfect encapsulation of what I wanted for this cabin. Perfect. So if you ever need a story written or lore written or anything like that, contact Marshall. He's going to be the one who does it. He does a fabulous job.
Yes, I've actually done it for about 4 other VTubers at this point. They started as fan works, but they ended up liking them so much that they asked, "Hey, could you be my official lore writer? Thanks." And they just used the story as like for various concepts or backgrounds on their characters.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, he does a fabulous job.
Thank you.
But what we're going to be talking about today is actually kind of a fun thing because Marshall has family history that we're going to talk about that's really fun.
Yeah, I've vaguely posted about this on Twitter before and brought it here and there, but I actually had a cursed bloodline. Da 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 da.
Yay!
I had a very when I was a child, um, living in the general New England, southern New England area. Salem is one of the kind of like big historical sites that don't directly, relate to actual American history, political history kind of stuff. So it's a very hot, uh, field trip spot for a lot of schools. And in the fourth grade, I believe, is when I had gone. Yeah, I should have been around 8 years old. We went to Salem, and I experienced an actual real life haunting due to the echoes of my ancestor and the curse on my bloodline. That was fun.
I was gonna say, was that your very first haunting, or like your very first experience with the paranormal?
More or less, it's the one that it's more most like notable for me, the one I can remember the most,
Right.
at least in the earliest point in my life. Because again, 8 years old is relatively young. Everything before that's just kind of a mesh of let me actually give an explanation of what happened. So again, it was around October because if you're going to go to Salem as a school field trip, you might as well do it during spooky month.
Oh, of course.
Um,
Requirement.
right as we were crossing over the bridge that takes you from Danvers into the state line of Salem. Just everyone's kind of enjoying themselves, talking, doing your normal stuff. I just suddenly got hit with a intense chill, like a bone deep type of chill that kind of usually hits you when you're sick, which is very odd because I was currently, not only did I not feel that before the bridge, but I was wearing like 3 layers. My mom refused to let me out without a winter jacket because it was particularly cold that year. So I'm wearing jeans, a folded on jacket, and for some reason I am literally shivering.
One
We get
second.
out of the bus. Oh, sorry.
You're good. You're good. I'm just. Hi, Gamma. You're not that late. You're literally like only a few minutes late. You're good. We're talking to Marshall about his family history and the ookie spookiness that is surrounding Thanksgiving vibes. Okay, Marshall, go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, okay. No worries. So we get out onto the town square because that's where they have, the museum. They have a bunch of tourist traps, basically.
Yeah.
And I get off the bus, and I have just my head's on a swivel because for reasons I can't express, I am certain that I am going to be killed. Now, you have to remember, being around 8 years old, I had experienced death. Like, I'd been to a wake before, I'd been to a funeral before, but my concept of my own mortality was sort of like, they go away. It's the same as someone moving away, basically. They're just not in your life anymore. It never really hit me about life ending. So this is another reason why this is actually the thing that kind of, it's sticking in my brain, because it was the first experience with my own mortality. I was convinced as an 8-year-old, someone here wants to kill me. And I'm just like that all throughout the day. Constantly like trying to shuffle around corners, not wanting to be taken by surprise. Just a great big mark for the American education system. My teacher saw me and said, Marshall, don't stay with the rest of the group. Don't slow down now. I'm clearly having a panic attack.
Oh,
And
but
she's
who
just telling
cares?
me to, yeah, she's just telling me, yeah, come on, you're slowing everybody down. Come on. It's like, thanks, woman. I'm having a bit of a breakdown here, but thank you.
Oh yeah, no.
Um,
I never had a teacher who actually listened to me on any of that stuff. I have a anxiety disorder, and they would be like, okay, well, why don't you go ahead and sit down and just deal with it? And I was like, cool, thank you. I'm gonna call my mom.
yeah, yeah, I wish we didn't even have phones back then. But so we get all back on the bus after everyone's had their, look around. Being completely blunt, I don't remember a single thing about what we actually saw that day or what we did that day because I was too busy fearing for my life.
Oh yeah.
And the worst part is, despite the fact that we had left the town, I still felt off. And when I was back at this age, I would actually get dropped off after school at my aunt's house, and then like around 7, we'd go home, and I'd go back for sleeping and all that kind of stuff, just the arrangement. But while I was at my aunt's house, I was still in a rut and still a little paranoid. I kept looking out the window, trying to make sure no one was coming. Like, I wasn't watching TV, I wasn't playing video games, wasn't doing my homework, wasn't doing anything other than looking out windows. Until finally, while looking out the window in all full-blown paranoid, from right behind my shoulder, I hear a very, masculine voice yell, Rebecca, so loud it made me turn around and try and see where I heard that from. I walk into the next room, the room that was directly behind me. There's nothing, and suddenly, just the minute I heard that voice say that, it all went away. Being a stupid kid, I did not think it was weird hearing a voice. My aunt was not married at the time. It was literally just me in the house. But I didn't think it was weird to hear a man's voice yell something like that, so I just went and watched TV.
Oh yeah, no, that's perfectly normal being in a house by yourself and hearing a loud male voice yell Rebecca. Yeah, typical things.
Yeah, child logic. But anyways, later that night, as my mom is cooking dinner and just kind of asked me about my day, I just randomly bring up. So here's a fun fact. I have multiple siblings. One of them is named Rebecca. So I turn to my mom and I'm like, hey, Mom, did Rebecca get in trouble today? And she turns to me and is like, no, she had a pretty good day today. We went to different schools at this time because of the age gap.
Sure.
And I go, I heard a man yelling at her today. And she goes, what? When did that happen? That was also weird because my sister Rebecca did not go to my aunt's at the time. So this wasn't part of her routine or anything. And when my mom is looking at me very confused as why I'm asking this, she finally says, what? Wait, you said you went to a field trip today. Where'd you go again? And I said, Salem. So she just goes, I think I know what happened. I'll tell you after dinner. So dinner happens. She calls me into her bedroom and she takes out a couple of letters and a couple of old-timey, old New England family tree kind of looking papers. And she shows me that we are directly descended from Rebecca Nurse, who was one of the victims of the Salem witch trials through my maternal line. And so Mom believes what happened was, since I had never been to Salem before in my life, that it was what she called a spiritual echo. Basically, I was feeling the same emotions that my ancestor had, and all of these memories were being placed onto me, because keep in mind, not only was I never back there, most of my family hadn't gone ever since, these events actually happened. So we'd been detached for 13 generations.
Oh yeah, so a long time.
She thinks that it was... Yeah, she thinks it was all just a bunch of spiritual kind of emotional baggage getting offloaded onto me, just sticking like that.
Oh,
and,
love emotional baggage being dropped off on an 8-year-old.
Yeah, literal generational trauma just being hit on me at 8 years old. And I think I've come out pretty well established, given the circumstances.
Mostly normal. You do tend to be a little bit
enough
skeleton-y and have some mushrooms growing around, but
there's only so normal you can be being a VTuber, but I think relative to that, I'm fairly normal of a human being.
Minus that one part. It's fine.
Yeah, that one part I'm saying here and now. There's other things, but anyways, yeah, that's fine. Um, so yeah, that was always fun, and as naturally, I kind of got interested in the history of the area, not only because of the familial connection, but also because of just coming to terms with your mortality at such a young age. You kind of start to wonder about that event and try and look around all the different kind of things. I don't think it was the sole reason I took an interest in just general history and became something of a history buff, but it did certainly affect my interest in American history.
Yeah, no, also, Hydra, wow, Cozy, you just had to bring up the mushrooms. What are you, microphobic? I'm gonna throw some yarn at you. Remind me to do that later.
Did you just ask your husband to remind you to assault him later?
Yes. You know,
Okay.
I get busy. I forget sometimes.
Fair enough.
So, so that was kind of your first, like, memorable paranormal situation. Mine was actually at the Winchester House. I don't know if you know the Winchester House.
Oh no, I love the Winchester House. That one's always very fun. I actually did a fun fact. I actually did a two truths and a lie type stream with one of my moots, and I actually convinced them that the Winchester House was a lie because they didn't think it was real.
I will be talking about it eventually. But if anybody doesn't know, it's basically a mansion that Mary Winchester, right? I want to make sure I have the name correct. Pretty sure it's Mary Winchester. But pretty sure Mary Winchester, Winchester, owner of Winchester Guns, basically made this manor convinced that she was being haunted by spirits, and she would, and she built onto her house over and over and over again, as you know, Marshall, trying to confuse the spirits. And I'm pretty sure I saw someone in one of the halls. Like, we were walking down the hall, everything was fine, and there was somebody at the end of the hall, and we're doing like a guided tour. And I thought for sure it just must be another one of the people just walking around, right? Because what else would it be? And what I didn't realize at the time, I was like 6, okay? And I was like, oh, Dad, there's somebody back there. And my dad's like, no, we're at the end of the line. Like, we're the end of the group, sweetie. And I was like, no, there's somebody back there. And when I went to go look back to show him, there was nobody there.
They were gone. They were gone.
And they were walking up one of the stairways that ends. Like, you know, that it just ends in the floor. And I was like, oh man, they shouldn't be doing that. Hey, Dad, there's somebody walking up. Huh.
He's like, what? What? Huh.
And that was my first memorable moment. Now, granted, that had nothing to do with my family history, which is why it's so cool that you have that connection. Because you went to Salem and then had this.
Yeah, it was a coincidental thing, which is kind of funny, but like also it also got me started down the rabbit hole of a lot of witchcraft and like colonial Puritan era type politics and all that kind of stuff, which is what part of what I think I wanted to talk about today too, just kind of a background on this kind of stuff. I'd like for this stream to be semi-educational.
Yeah, I was gonna say, go for it. We're gonna give extra context, because I don't know if everybody knows about. I mean, everybody ought to know what happened at Salem with the Salem witch trials, but you know, also, who doesn't love chit-chatting about some stuff, right?
Yeah, I know that it's kind of, trust me, as I will be able to tell you, even people actively teaching about the Salem witch trials don't always know what happened, and we can talk about why or that kind of stuff. But I feel like maybe it's best to not get ahead of ourselves and maybe give some of that ever important context to some of these things. So why not, in order to talk about the late 1600s Salem witch trials, do you mind if I just kind of like start
Go right
blathering,
ahead.
blabbing, yapping.
Go right
All
ahead, my
right.
dude.
Well, in that case, let me take you all back to really where the story, for the full context, really begins with the bubonic plague. So the bubonic plague, very important event in the 1300s Europe, killed about 1/3 of the population of the entire continent. That's what we call a primary event when it comes to historical events. A secondary event of that kind of thing is something such as, I guess what you'd call the mass lessening of devotion, or basically, okay, a side effect of the bubonic plague happening was that a lot of the lay people, the general populace of Europe, kind of had the question, hey God, why didn't you stop this? Are we not faithful enough? Are we not doing things correctly? Why are our entire families being killed by this thing we can't see? Is this the apocalypse? Is this the pestilence we were warned of? And the clergy really didn't have that many answers, or at the very least didn't have answers that were the populace wanted to hear.
Well, and
So,
you're
as a
searching
result
for a
of this-
reason why this terrible thing is happening. Of course, you're going to search to God first, and then if you don't receive the answers you want, of course, this is going to cause like a change in feeling.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, one of the things that ended up happening was, in general, people weren't like outright rebelling. They weren't certainly like going against the church outright, but it was kind of small things at the beginning, like not like missing church on Sundays kind of stuff, or like maybe you didn't say your prayers, or you waited until you actually had all of your foods before you thanked God for the harvest and stuff like that. However, another sort of backdrop of this was a lot of the sort of pre-Christian traditions, like Celtic and local traditions from like the Roman era, I should say, of Europe, started to kind of resurface as, I guess you could call it, as a secondary protection sort of thing. Kind of like, well, we've seen that praying to God isn't always going to give us what we want. So maybe we could turn to some of these old practices. We won't invoke any of the old gods, any of the Roman pantheon or anything like that. We won't do any of that kind of stuff, but we could still probably use some of the herbal techniques, the alchemies kind of stuff. And by the 1400s, this had gotten common enough that a lot of the clergy had taken notice. Now, this is kind of an important thing I need to, I guess, disclaimer I'm going to point out there. I know plenty of witches, plenty of people with different things, so I know just using the term witch is probably gonna, even by this point, some people are probably gonna be actualing me, even though they aren't doing it in chat or anything like that. But at this time, I should say that because today witchcraft is more like an umbrella term for all these different sort of practices. I even had it described to me once. Each witch is their own different witchcraft kind of thing, It's like so decentralized. Well, at the time, that wasn't the case. At the time, there were all these very definitive definitions for things. And one of the big things was that while magic had always existed in the terms of like the religious sense or the way that Christianity in Europe understood it, it was usually sourced by some kind of other group. So like priests or prophets of pagan pantheons, or like court magicians, or like druids, shamans from different kind of like nature worshipping groups. It was never Christians themselves casting spells in this way, as was now happening post bubonic plague. So the Catholic Church kind of gets a little bit like antsy because you're not supposed to be doing this, and they didn't think they'd ever have to be like outright saying not to do this kind of stuff. But eventually, this whole witchcraft thing, or rather this spells being casted by people claiming, oh, I'm not doing it through paganism, I'm doing it while still being a good Christian, it kind of got to a point where officially, I need to double check which pope it was. Okay, honestly, to the story, it probably doesn't matter because I don't want to digress too far from the story. The Pope at the time officially declares witchcraft and wizardry, witchcraft and witchery to be any spell, hex, or ritual done with the intent to cause harm, either physically or spiritually, to a fellow human being, regardless of its source. So basically, it was now, magic wasn't just something that old-timey priests and prophets could do. It is something a Christian can do, but you're not supposed to do it because don't bring harm to people, kind of stuff. Is that kind of like, are you starting to see the things coming together, or do you have any questions so far?
I was gonna say, yeah, no, see, this all makes sense, and actually, eventually, I will be talking about the Fox sisters, who were also charged with witchery, because this was something that, like, went on for forever. I don't remember when the last witch law was revoked, but it was relatively recently.
Yeah, no, it was, there's been a lot of, like, with the history of witchcraft and witchery. You'll actually find, though, this is something that I really, really want to get interesting. It's kind of one of those things that is always fascinating about history, is when we think about witch trials, when we think about, the persecution of people doing witchcraft and stuff like that, it's always, like, burning at the stake. It's all about these, like, torturous deaths, stuff like that. And boy, was that not the case when it originally happened.
No.
I feel like the best way to discuss that is to get into the story of the very first recorded witch trial in Europe. And in order to start talking about that, Cozy, we got to talk about if no one leaves this stream today knowing anything else about this, I want them to know about this individual I'm about to talk about right here, right now. The man, the myth, nay, the legend, Father Heinrich Kramer. Cozy, have you ever heard about Heinrich Kramer in your life?
The name sounds so familiar, and actually, ironically, I am also a witch, so I should know this name. I just can't remember.
Well, maybe I can, like, jog your memory, but boy, was he a funny guy. For one thing, he was German, so already getting off to a fun start. But secondary, Heinrich Kramer had a very interesting belief. He believed that as a person, he was like primo heaven material. He was convinced that he was like he could be an apostle if he just lived, a few 1,500 years ago. If he, he's gonna get it, except for this one problem, this one sticking thorn in his side, which was, man, women are hot. That made him so mad, because no matter how hard he tried, no matter how pious he tried to be, he could not get out of his head just this lust he felt for the opposite sex.
Damn, now, biology wins again.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's kind of hard when you've taken a vow of chastity. That's, now not living that up is fairly not Christian. You had the choice to not be a priest, but he wanted to. But man, these women, they were making it hard. Now, here's something very funny the first funny little thing that I wanted to get in there. He actually did go to his confessor, which is basically a monk or a priest whose sole job is to help other monks and priests figure out, like, lifestyle sort of things to live in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And he asked him, how do I deal with this? How can I do this? And the confessor told him, it is best to remember that even the grandest of Christians were fallible humans at the end of the day. They must ask God and give over all of their pains and their sins to him. Take this, meditate upon it, find fraternity in your brothers, and keep it as your daily cross, to remember, no matter how pious you may feel, it is best to always remember we are sinful, yet not irredeemable. So, how do you feel about that?
I mean, well, honestly, I think he probably just needed to get some, and he probably would have calmed down just by a lot.
Well, yeah, your theory, I don't want to ruin your theory, Cozy, but it might be disproven. Well, okay, because despite what the confessor might have told him to do, Kramer's response was basically just, I'm cutting it down here. It was, that's stupid.
That's right.
Instead, I'm I'm gonna do this real cool move called absolutely violently hating women. I am going to take the saying hate the sin, love the sinner, and change it to hate the sin, love the sinner, but women are the sin, so I'm gonna hate women.
Well, yeah, because obviously it's not his fault that he's
Yeah,
biologically a man and wants to be with a woman. No. It's the woman's fault, obviously.
exactly. And you see the secondary problem. Living back in the mid to late 1400s, he didn't have any forums where he could unironically call women females and complain to his fellow gentlemen about just how his life is literally being ruined by women not dating him, and maybe they look at him bad because his chin's a little bit off. So naturally, he
Guys, I'm an
decides.
alpha. Don't you understand? Ugh.
Exactly, yeah. So he eventually he was actually one of the individuals who sent forth some documents on this practice, because Central Germany was actually a hub. There's a good reason that a lot of Germanic fairy tales and other Germanic sort of pre-Christian / Roman traditions are still around, is because it was a very orally tradition kind of stuff. People kind of kept the stories going, and it was also naturally a hub where people would go for these extra like magical type things.
Fair.
So he sent like a couple of documents which got his name officially recognized like by the Pope as an expert, which eventually led to him being listed as the first inquisitor in charge of hunting witches. Now,
The first witch hunter. That's right.
exactly. Well, he was one of two. Technically, there was also another one named Bishop Spencer. I'll get to him in a little bit, but I want to focus on Father Kramer right now, because, oh boy, we got some things to get into. So, here's a fun little, like, I don't want to affect people's opinion one way or the other, so I'm going to kind of present this appointment in the two potential ways you could look at it. Now, Father Kramer believed that, he was such an expert, and he had been so focused and so devoted that the Pope had no other choice. There would be no one better for the position than him. He was also very willing to leave his monastic lifestyle and go like across the countryside to kind of investigate and find this newfound heresy type thing. So that's how Father Kramer kind of viewed it. There's another interpretation of view it, which is the Pope himself didn't even really think witchcraft was all that heinous at the time, because it was literally just like this year announced as even existing. And Father Kramer was literally the only person who would not be missed if he was sent out into the countryside indefinitely to go look up something that may or not even really be a problem, according to the Pope.
You go hunt those witches. You go. Yeah,
No, exactly. No, well, here is literally the funniest excerpt in regards to the Pope's relationship specifically to Kramer. Kramer had, or like presented in his thesis papers to the Pope, we should deem witchcraft to be even more of an even worse crime than blaspheming and heresy. Because while blasphemy is a crime against God, witchcraft is a crime against man and God. It is spiritually evil as well as hurting other people. And the Pope specifically said, no, heresy and blasphemy are in fact worse than witchcraft. It was the only arguments that was specifically denounced by the Pope from the initial kind of papers that had been sent to him on their findings on witchcraft.
Damn.
And I don't want to throw any sort of assumptions onto. Okay. Yes, AR Gamer, I will be getting to that. Don't worry. Yes, I know that book. That book's creation will be.
Yes, the book will be talked about, but also he said one guy was put under a slab of wood and they kept piling rocks on it until he got squished. Yeah.
Again, that's Giles Corey. We'll get to him in due time. Don't worry. I'm trying to keep a chronology on here just so there's some semblance of order.
You're good.
Okay, sorry. It was Pope Innocent the Eighth that I was the guy who officially declared, no, this isn't how we're going to do this. But anyways,
so... You're all good, Gamma.
So
don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about Gamma. We just... we understand you might not have heard the introduction at the beginning. Where was I? Right. So having to, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but maybe Father Kramer was the only person for the job. Maybe literally everybody else who sent a treatise had more important things to do, and so they just sent Father Kramer out. But boy, let us get into Innsbruck, Germany, the location of the very first witch trial in European history. So, about a year into his little pilgrimage, his little hiatus, however you want to put it, Father Kramer walks into this town called Innsbruck, right?
Right.
And his stated declaration is he is here to bring witches to justice. He has not had any luck in this past year finding witches, let alone putting them to justice. So, he was given episcopal justification, or jurisdiction rather, for wherever he was going. Basically, the Pope said, okay, as long as you're off, it doesn't matter what diocese you're in, you can still partake in the roles and duties of a priest, so long as you're out doing things in the name of this thing we sent you out to do.
Yeah, so get out of here and, shoo.
Yeah.
Go be a weirdo over there.
What ended up doing, when he got to Innsbruck, he was looking around, kind of getting a feel for the people, but he couldn't help but notice there was this one particular woman named Helena, I believe her name is Helena Schudenbaron, something like that. So, Father Kramer couldn't help but notice she wasn't coming to church on Sundays, and he found that rather suspicious.
Oh, egregious at the time.
Yeah, a little bit after, like, maybe less than a month, but a little bit over 2 weeks or so, he eventually approaches her and just publicly declares, why are you not coming to church? Like, what is it that makes the house of God so egregious to you? And she basically says, I don't find any part of the church doctrine heretical. I don't disagree with anything. I will, in fact, be going back to church when our old priest is put back in charge. I just don't like you doing it. Because every single time you give a homily, you do nothing but tell women. This is the funniest part. This is a court doctrine that a magistrate had to write out on the events according to both the witnesses. And it was literally just Helena saying, you do nothing but tell women we are the source of all sin. The men in town have basically been told nothing about their own iniquities. I don't like hearing about this, so I'm just not going to come to church.
Yeah, I don't like your preaching, and I don't want to be there, so...
Exactly, because you're not even from town. I don't even like you all that much. So Father Kramer decides to yell blasphemy and then writes a letter to the bishop asking him to please come and punish Helena. And this is another very funny correspondence between someone of authority and Heinrich Kramer. Basically, the bishop writes back, she insulted you, that's not blaspheming the church. And that was the end of it. Just an insult to you is not a blasphemy, so get over it.
But Pope, she insulted my alphaness.
It wasn't. It wasn't even a pope. It wasn't bishop. Upon being given this letter, he then declared she was a witch, and thus called for a magistrate to have a witch trial be put underway. And to call it a comedy of errors is an understatement, because the magistrate couldn't understand half of what Heinrich Kramer was even trying to get at. One of the notes during the trial stated that proof of her witchery was that the family goat was giving an inordinate amount of milk. Father Kramer did not specify if it was too much or too little. He simply stated he hit their milk bucket with a cane, and he could tell that the milk inside, or the milk that they were using for, was inordinate of what it should have been, and did not clarify any further. A whole host of other things. Oh, sorry, did you have something?
I was gonna say, so the goat made either too much milk or too little milk, and that obviously, has nothing to do with the goat, because the goat is just a goat.
No, exactly. It's a spell. It's a spell. It's probably some kind of spell to make it either too sickly or too numerous in the milk. Who knows?
It's obviously the woman's fault, because the goat was doing weird things. Clearly.
Oh yeah. Oh, exactly. So okay, here's where the that comment you had made earlier about, maybe if Heinrich Kramer just hadn't had that vow of chastity, maybe things would be kind of cool. During the trial, he began demanding Helena specify her bedroom habits. She was an unmarried woman, and he was insistent that she must be doing something, and he wanted her to publicly declare what it was in his presence.
He probably just wanted to know when she was gonna be home so that he could go peep on her.
Oh, okay, Cozy, you gotta stop being a psychic right now, because we aren't getting to that part yet.
Like, hey, so what time do you change your clothes by the open window? Just a question.
Well, to the magistrate's credit, literally the second he started asking those bedroom habits, he's like, okay, I see no proof of any kind of witchcraft, so she is not guilty. Literally, so at the end of the day, the first, this witch trial, these things of mass death, hysteria, whatever you call it, the very first one was ended with a fine that was literally just enough to pay for the magistrate, and one of Helena's friends was put in the stocks for 2 days because she had said something that was deemed a bit more beyond Kramer into insulting the order that he was a member of, the priestly order he was a member of.
Yeah.
So she basically got, she got put in the corner. But yeah, so
basically the magistrate was like, hey, can you pay for my gas? And then, we'll be good.
Literally, yeah. Literally, the magistrate needed a justification for the local governance for why he was out in this small backwoods German town. And so he just had that. But anyways, kind of like what you were then saying there, Cozy, immediately after the trial ended, Father Kramer didn't say, darn, I didn't prove anything wrong. It's, darn, this witch has gone, and she's gone and hypnotized everyone into thinking wrong thoughts. I need to find better proof. And so he proceeded to start stalking her.
Oh, great.
To the point, yeah, just every day she would notice him about 50 yards back at all times, all hours of the day. He'd be kind of creeping through the bushes and the trees. Sometimes she saw him looking through the window of her house. Very creepy stuff.
This sounds like 100% like a schoolboy who doesn't know how to say, hey, I have a crush on you, but yanks on little girls' ponytails. This 100% sounds like this. You're a witch. Yes, come on.
Yeah. So, eventually, the family decided to complain again to the bishop, the same one who said, hey, insulting you is not blasphemy, in which case the bishop got so angry at Kramer, he literally just said, okay, you are officially banished from my diocese.
Oh my God.
So basically, if Father Kramer attempted to do any sort of priestly actions within this, Innsbruck German diocese, he would lose his collar, he'd lose his authority, and just become a layperson again. And the reasons for it were listed as insanity and senility.
Yeah, no, that 100% sounds like he just needed to go pay somebody and have a great time, and, Well,
unfortunately, we'll never know, because that's not the lesson he took from the experience. You want to know what he decided to do instead?
Oh, goody. Any deal?
He decided to look himself in the mirror and said, you know what, Kramer? You know so much about witches. You're the foremost expert on witchcraft in the entire world. It wasn't because you couldn't disprove or prove witchcraft was happening. It's that the magistrate and all the other people who had to listen to you, they just didn't know what witchcraft is. I need to write a book. And if I write this book and I get it through into an authoritative academic area, a university basically, I can start teaching other inquisitors about witchcraft, and they can see how big of a problem it is. And thus, AR Gamma, as you thoroughly displayed, he began writing his treatise on witches, which would become known as the Hammer of Witches, which is a text in 5 parts whose sole purpose is to help individuals identify witches, find common practices and sources of witches, and how to deal with witches.
This was
This is
100% Kramer's like version of a Dude Bro podcast.
Oh yeah, no, this was absolutely his Manosphere treatise. You want to know the funniest part about this treatise specifically?
What you got?
So it's in 5 parts. The first 2 parts are literally just trying to convince everyone that he should be taken seriously in any way possible. The first act is literally an entire like word for word copying of the papal bull that first declared witchcraft. Keep in mind, this book began. He began working on this book 2 years after that treatise or like that papal bull was formally announced. But he's writing it as if this book was part of what convinced that treatise to come into place.
Got it.
So he's trying to say, hey, the Pope said that everything inside of this book is proof of witchcraft, and you should follow witchcraft. The second act was literally a bunch of quotes from college professors that he was friends with, talking about how cool of a guy he is and how trustworthy and worldly traveled and like educated he is. And all this other kind of stuff has nothing to do with witchcraft in the slightest. It solely exists to try and convince people, hey, other smart people said that I'm smart. You should listen to them.
Because they said I'm smart, that means that I'm like the perfect person for this. And therefore,
exactly, yeah.
I am the best Dude Bro of all time.
Exactly. It's literally bringing on, it's Andrew Tate having Sneeko and Agent Ross and all of them just all at once. Like, yeah, come on, guys, listen. But the funniest part is these guys, again, didn't even know that those quotes were being used for this book. Some of them were said years beforehand.
Oh, that was probably like, hey, man, thank you for bringing me that jam. I was really kind of stuck without that, you know. My toast would have been very boring without you. You're a great guy for bringing me that. And this professor said I was the best witch hunter of all time. What?
What?
I just meant thank you for the jam.
Yeah. Honestly, probably. Again, they might as well have been. They don't know the difference. Well, and then the final 3 parts are, I know this might be demystifying. Literally think of every sort of stereotypical Wicked Witch of the West type witch, and yeah, that's basically what this book was. Those things exist because of this book.
Well, it had to come from somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest thing that this book did ultimately was witchcraft and witchery was a completely gender-neutral term when it was first formally declared as, like, something that was wrong. Boy, did Father Kramer change that, because, boy, are witches identified almost exclusively by things women did. Witches' familiars are goats and cats, almost like women are the domestic, more often than not, in Europe at this time. So they'd be with the domesticated animals, working the goats for their milk and being nearby to the cats. Oh, witches use cauldrons to make their potions, almost like a cauldron was a fairly standard means of making soup and porridge, the main foods that the populace made, and of course women had to do. Oh, you can tell that there's a witch because they tend to go into the forest and collect herbs and flowers and stuff, things that women often did. Yeah. Oh, you can tell it's a woman, it's a witch because they are very old and outlived their husband, almost like men on average died younger back then, kind of stuff.
Almost, you can tell a witch because she says that she doesn't like me, so therefore, the witch.
Exactly. So he, after writing this all down, he wanted to get it into the universities under the demonology departments. Basically, seminarians would teach on different types of demons. I'd just like to point out, he literally wrote a book where he described his view on women, and he wanted to put it in the demon section. That was denied. That was denied by the people in charge, because reading the book, they note, even he himself say that witches are servants of demons. They are not themselves the demons. And that means that witchcraft would, according to his treatises, be a type of heresy. So they can't do anything in the demonology department of the universities. They got to send it to experts on heresy. Let me ask you this question, Cozy. Who do you think was the most common and highest authorities on heretics in the 1400s Europe.
I have no idea actually. I'm sure.
You wouldn't expect the Inquisition, would you?
Oh, of course, nobody expects the Inquisition. God.
Nobody. Yeah, it's just the German Inquisition, not the Spanish Inquisition. But okay, don't worry, you didn't get that one. But here's another question. I'm sure it can be a slam dunk. What do you think happened when the Inquisition got their hands on a book that gave a very detailed explanation of like horrible things heretics did, and described methods of discovering them and or punishing them that were often fatal?
Oh, I'm sure they thought this was like the best book of all time.
You would be wrong again, Cozy. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
2 out of 2, completely out of it. Yeah, no. This is another fun quote that I've been finding while researching Heinrich Kramer. The official declaration by the Inquisition on this book was, the findings within this book are of such moral and legal depravity that they cannot be seen as anything short of evil in and of themselves. The Inquisition refused to accept this book into their like arsenals, because this is kind of one of those things like moral dissonance, I guess you could say. While today we understand people will eventually confess to anything when under duress to kind of like make things stop, back at the time, they believed that as long as you were true and like your soul was strong, you could endure any sort of, we'll say, advanced interrogation just fine. The thing was, a lot of the punishments in Hammer of Witches were, again, completely fatal. Like the only way to, either you were discovered to be a witch or you were killed. So they said there is literally no method out of the actual questioning in which someone could either survive or be seen as innocent. So they didn't accept it. But you want to know why that ultimately didn't matter?
Why?
Was because Father Kramer, with all his hewing and hawing and yelling about witchcraft, caught some attention from some influential people outside of the church. The nobility. The nobility of Europe, they just could not help but be fascinated by ideas of like magic still being used in these countries that supposedly have like pushed out all the snakes, all the shamans, the druids and stuff like that. Suddenly there's this resurgence. Oh, people are doing magic these days. How very gauche, how very quaint. And so naturally, Father Kramer, for better or worse, was declared as one of the experts on this. So a lot of nobles all across Europe really wanted to get their hands on this treatise on witchery.
So they were bored.
Yeah, they were bored, and this was just a new thing that was kind of interesting. It's kind of fascinating how Heinrich Kramer, like the Hammer of Witches becoming the authority matter that it was, kind of mirrors how Sigmund Freud got his authority, even though basically every psychologist will tell you today that the guy was a complete idiot who doesn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, so somebody who studies psychology, yeah, Freud was one of those that everybody was like, he's like, yes, everybody wants to have sex with their mother. And everybody's like, no?
No. Now, my favorite story about Freud was he literally once did a presentation on calculus, and an actual master's in calculus said that he didn't know what he was talking about. And Freud's response was to go, I was just speaking on matters so advanced you couldn't figure them out. He was high on coke at the time he was given the presentation.
Perfect. Exactly what you would expect.
Exactly, yes. So here's the thing. For better or for worse, the Hammer of Witches is now being passed around across Europe as an authoritative text on witchcraft, even though it is not officially recognized by, I guess you could call it, the fun police of the Inquisition and the Catholic Church across Europe.
The authority. The actual authorities were like, nah, this is bullshit.
Yeah, the actual authorities are kind of like, hey, this is utter nonsense, and also the man was officially declared to be insane by at least one bishop. Why? Oh, I should probably say this before I forget. Bishop Spencer, the other guy who was declared one of these experts on witchcraft, also hated Kramer. Perfect. He didn't even have to deal with the guy in his personal diocese, but he still banned him from teaching in the diocese after getting reports. And kind of unfortunately, he was used by Kramer like posthumously,
Oh no.
because in the second edition of the Hammer of Witches, it credits Bishop Spencer as a co-author,
Oh
even
no.
though not a single thing inside the book was actually changed or added upon. And
Oh
he
no.
was dead for years when the second edition first started getting copied down.
So he used somebody else's good name. That's great.
Literally, he tried to say, no, this is not just the insane ramblings of a man who has ulterior motives. This was a peer-reviewed treatise. You have to listen to it.
Yeah, this was totally not
So
written by a guy who just hasn't gotten any in decades. That's all.
exactly. But back to the original question we were trying to get to. How do we go from this kind of like, it's kind of a joke, no one's taking it all that seriously, to, burn the witch, all that kind of stuff? Well, now here comes another historical event: Protestant Reformation.
Yay!
Now this is it, it's skipping ahead a couple of decades, but like in terms at least of this story, the next major aspect, the next biggest kind of hiccup is the Protestant Reformation. Because boy, oh boy, here's my question. I guess I should pose to you, Cozy. What like perception or what kind of like view do you have of the Protestant Reformation? You don't have to give you don't have to give like a anything questionable, but like just in general as a historical event, how do you like view it?
How I generally view them is not exactly as strict as the Puritans. A little less so, but even then.
Oh yeah, no, you wouldn't be wrong in that regard, and there's a reason for that. I was thinking more when I was growing up, it was always depicted as, this fraternity of well-meaning kind of, guys who just had some problems with the way things were being treated, and and the indulgences and all this kind of stuff. Like that's how I was taught it, being raised.
See, and I was just
'Cause-
taught that they were the less strict versions of the Puritans, and you don't even want to talk about the Puritans, but they're a little bit less like that.
Well, oh yeah, well, okay, and both of these were kind of, sort of. So, not really, not really. It was an absolute free for all. It was literally, if you had been to a seminary and graduated and had any kind of disagreements, you could basically start a whole church.
Yep, why not?
And they didn't always get that along. In fact, a very fun story I once came across was Martin Luther, the guy who started the whole thing, once got so mad he once declared, "I would rather drink blood with the Pope than wine with the Swiss." I will not be giving context to why he said that.
Oh god.
Yes, and so there's all this different like disagreements between like state-sanctioned churches versus populist movements, denominations versus just philosophies and sets of rules kind of stuff. So basically every single kind of point of view, again, it would find someone to be pushing it forward as long as they had a general theologian who liked the idea. The one that really kind of got a foothold and is very important for our discussion on Puritans, we're going to be kind of focusing more on the Puritans pretty soon, over the witches at this moment, was the Anabaptist movement. Oversimplifying it, if you think about any sort of like fundamentalist church here in America, most of them spawn from the Anabaptist movement. It was a very fire and brimstone type interpretation of the Bible. Very common to have things like, oh yes, God holds all of humanity in the palm of his hand, and he's just waiting for you to give him an excuse to turn that hand over and let you fall into hell, so don't go doing it.
He'll tempt you.
So he'll tempt you. But here was a fun thing. So naturally, since they were reforming or rebelling or however you want to interpret it from the Catholic Church, naturally, a lot of them didn't really want to follow the traditional or officially held books or treatises or traditions of the Catholics. But they weren't against Christian texts. It's kind of this kind of muddied water sort of thing where a lot of them kind of sort of they disagree with the church. They said that it had lost its divine right, it had lost its treatise from God,
Right.
but they also had literally no context for the Christian religion prior to its existence and formalization and taking over all of Europe. So they kind of just grab any book that again kind of agreed with what they were saying and would go ham with it. And lucky for the Hammer of Witches, since it was never formally declared as a sacred text or was never formally accepted by the Inquisitions, hey, what do you know? They could use it. And boy, did the Anabaptists just absolutely love any sort of story that said there were people actively worshiping devils and you needed to kill them.
So it was they were looking for confirmation bias, and they found it.
More or less. I'm sure, like, getting into it, that there were some who were at least being genuine in their thought processes, but just going off of the mass, like, population appeal and just the sheer number of the different groups spawning out, it very often, like, again, some of these things, it was literally the local monarch just didn't want to have to keep paying tithes to Rome anymore. So he just declared, oh yes, I am now a Protestant church, and I am the head of that church. Wouldn't you know it? Give me the money.
I'll take that. Thank you.
Oh yeah, exactly. Ironically, there were some during this, like the various religious wars across Europe in this time period. Sometimes there'd be entire things where Protestants were burning other Protestants at the stake because one of them was an official, like, government-sanctioned church and the other one wasn't, and so they'd kill them. But since most of the populace didn't really care about being Catholic, they all agreed to convert to Protestantism, so it was just infighting kind of stuff. Again, not the fraternity. So that's kind of the messier, again, out of the focus of this discussion aspect of the Protestant Reformation, but how it affects the widespreadness and growing authority of the Hammer of Witches. Now let's talk about those Puritans, who you were telling me you were very... what's your opinion? How do you view Puritans? Because that's kind of relevant. Okay, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that.
Thank you, Gam. Hold on, I was muted by accident on my stream, so let me redo that. Thank you, Gamma, for pointing that out. I greatly appreciate you. So when I was taught in school about the Puritans, basically what I was taught was that the Puritans were just, looking for adventure and religious freedom, but don't worry about that. But it's that these people were looking for the new world. Yay.
Yay. Okay, again, not to, say that the education system, again, without my teacher, didn't really care about that one field trip.
Yeah, no, I learned
denounce it
way later that it's Puritans.
I'm not saying it's wrong, but here's actually what actually happened. So the Puritans, they had existed, they got their start, their formalization during the reign of Elizabeth I, off in England. So, here's another kind of question I want to keep engaging you with. What is your view, or what do you know about Anglicanism, specifically the Church of England?
So the Church of England, I know, of course, a little bit. I know, so when I learned more about the Puritans and, their whole thing, I know that the Church of England, I believe, was the ones that were like, hey, we're cool with, everybody else's stuff, but you Puritans, you guys need to go. You guys are too much.
Again, that's kind of an oversimplification. Okay.
Oh, very.
Yeah, so the Anglican Church has this funny little thing where it was founded because Henry VIII wanted to bang this woman, and she said, you can't unless I become queen. And he's like, but I can't divorce my wife. I already did that once. And she said, I don't care. Either I become queen or you don't get this. And so since the Pope said, hey, I'm not going to sign off on you divorcing this one woman, you literally already asked me to, and so no. He just said, okay, time to make a whole new church, which is funny because because Henry was originally a supporter during when the Protestant Reformation in Germany got started, but now suddenly he's like, oh yeah, no, I disagree. And it wasn't until Elizabeth I that Anglicanism was officially declared and formalized as a branch or denomination of Protestantism. Here's a funny little thing, is since all those theologians I had mentioned earlier, they had at least some kind of stance or teaching that they thought was like being misrepresented or suppressed by the Catholics. King Henry and Anglicanism had literally no excuse. They had literally no teaching that they necessarily disagreed with. It was literally just, I wanted to bang this woman, and that was the disagreement that the Catholics had with King Henry. So the Puritans popped up. They were essentially, again, this isn't really a denominational thing, but they took Calvinist teachings. The teachings of Calvin, who was a guy who really didn't like the kind of showmanship, the kind of like, you know, grand cathedrals and big vestments and loud music kind of stuff. He thought that Christianity should be a lot simpler type of stuff. Yeah. And the Puritans kind of took that along. They were very, very concerned that the British monarchy, despite the whole kerfuffle Henry caused, was still a bit too Catholic, because they still had bishops, they still signed with the cross, they still used the common prayers that were officially like announced and declared by the Catholics, and basically the only difference was the monarch was the head of the church, and they used English and lay people texts rather than Latin. But Elizabeth did a lot to basically make them think they were getting a lot and giving them basically nothing. She just formally declared Anglicanism was a type of Protestantism, and Bob's your uncle, everything's fine.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem that really caused, you know, things to get fun. Because Elizabeth basically looked at the kind of, you know, Game of Thrones that's usually happening with monarchies, with heirs and, you know, marrying well, having plenty of male children, and said, forget all that, I'm not marrying nor having children. The Tudor line came completely to an end, which is very unfortunate for all of Europe, all of Britain, and by extension, all of Europe, because with the Tudor line out, they had to find a new guy. And wouldn't you know it, Henry VIII's father had descendants through the House Stuart. And so James I, or James of House Stuart, became the monarch, or became the king of England and Scotland at the same time, because his mother was the Queen of Scotland, and his father, again, was a descendant of, I believe it was Henry's daughter. It's a lot of like bloodline kind of stuff. But he becomes monarch, and that causes a lot of cultural and religious upheaval. For one, James's mother is a Catholic, and so those concerns the Puritans were having kind of started to pop up again, because you're not Elizabeth. She wasn't giving us what we wanted. And naturally, another kind of big problem that pops up when a monarchy takes over is the questions of who's in charge.
Yeah.
And when a new house comes in charge, they kind of want to, you know, spend a lot of time shutting up everyone who says, hey, I don't like you being in charge. So yeah. James and his son Charles I spent a lot of time basically trying to sequester more and more power. This didn't really affect things on the religious side because both were Protestants. However, James I caused the biggest kerfuffle of all because he believed in an absolute monarchy, so he dissolved Parliament completely and declared he had no intention of bringing it back.
Which is a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. Not only, interesting fact, that is the religious persecution that they constantly talk about in school. Because Parliament was literally the only place where Puritans could get appointed a government stance. Again, all of the bishops at this time, the Anglican bishops, were appointed by the monarch, the king, basically. And since none of the Puritans wanted to go through the seminary system, the most power they could possibly get was by becoming a member of Parliament.
Yeah.
With Parliament gone, they basically had no power.
So you're stuck.
Yeah, so you're stuck, and so again, they're getting angry because now, they're not making those changes. They're not getting rid of those bishops. They're not getting rid of those vestments. They're not changing the common prayer books. And even worse, this House of Stuart, they've got whole branches of the family that are still practicing Catholics. they're just going to bring us back and undo the entire Reformation. And so that's when they decide, hey, we're going to go to this new world. And yes, King Charles actually says, all right, fine. You're still British citizens. You're still, associated with us, and you're still Anglicans. But yes, if you feel you're not getting your representation, go ahead. And so they sail to the new world. I'm not trying to judge people. Again, I'm trying to be as objective as I possibly can, but I'd just like to point out that all that hoopla about religious persecution kind of loses a lot of its sting, or a lot of its, getting you right in the heart, when at literally the exact same time that they were being told by the monarch, okay, we'll give you this plot of land in this new area, this new colony that you can start up. Down the street, if you happen to be a noble who was a Catholic, you lost your title, lost your money, and lost your head in that order.
Oh.
Because fun fact, James the First, there was actually an attempt. Guy Fawkes, the guy from V for Vendetta?
Yeah.
Yeah, the real life person Guy Fawkes was a noble who wanted to see a Catholic monarchy reinstated. So he attempted to assassinate, or was part of a conspiracy to assassinate King James and get his, I believe, niece, who was a practicing Catholic, on the throne and use her as like a puppet, basically. But again, once it was found, there was literally a conspiracy of a bunch of English nobles who were trying to kill the monarch. And they did. The Dutch did. Again, some of the Puritans, again, because this was Calvinism, good point, Hydra, because it was Calvinism, the Dutch were usually the ones most associated with Calvin.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that they spent time with the Dutch, it was the Dutch literally, in order to escape, or rather the reformist Calvinist Dutch, in order to escape the official Church of Holland and other kind of those established monarchies persecuting and killing them during those wars that I had mentioned, they actually came to England, basically just to get sanctuary from the Puritans, because they all basically believe the same things. So yes, they were intermixing, but it was in the other direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, so King James, he was trying to be tolerant for a time, but then, the whole gunpowder plot put a damper on things. They actively restarted some of those executions. Anyways, but then we head back to the Puritans landing in Massachusetts Bay Colony. They start up a bunch of different towns. So we're getting closer and closer to those damn witch trials. The very last bit of important information about Europe as it relates to the witch trials was literally the decade before the witch trials started up. The worst fear imaginable that the Puritans could have had happened. James II, who was, I believe, the great nephew of James I, ascended to the throne again after Charles basically got executed and deposed by Jacobins for getting rid of Parliament. James I took over, James II rather, took over, and he's a Catholic. He's married to a Catholic. If he's still in charge, the Reformation would all have been for nothing. So all these Puritans kind of sort of are like, hey, we're supposed to be Anglicans, and the head of the church, he's not Anglican anymore. What do we do? And when the secular government of Britain, which had been reestablished by this point, said, I mean, you're still British citizens, so keep paying your taxes and we'll figure it out. The Puritans' response was, well, this treatise we had with the original James and Charles is no longer in effect because you have done away with the spiritualism we were agreed with. So currently, the British do not have a governor that the Puritans recognize. And as you can probably tell from this retelling, the Puritans were very decentralized when it came to their spiritual beliefs. They've now lost literally any authority figure they possibly could have had. And so basically every town, whoever was the most passionate speaker, the most charismatic speaker, or the person that the most people on the Episcopal Council or the Parish Council liked, was the de facto guy in charge.
So if Bob was really talkative, everybody just kind of went with what Bob said.
Exactly. If Bob just really said, and wouldn't you know it, the whole fear that they were dealing with of, hey, the the Stewart line, they seem to be liking them Vatican boys a bit too much for our liking. Oh no, literally one of the practicers is now in charge. Well, they basically was just like they went into overdrive into the whole reformist stances of, hey, the devil is literally going to try and undo anything. He literally did it to us. They put the poperies back into Westminster Abbey. And that's where we find ourselves in 1691 when the Salem witch trials started. So, what do you think, Cozy? Was that good enough context for how exactly this absolute powder keg could get set up?
Oh yeah, no, this is like the perfect like it's the best domino effect that you could have was the witch trials. Like you needed. It wasn't just, oh yeah, this thing happened. It was like, well, this had to happen, and then this had to happen, and then this had to happen later. Like, if you want to jump in the middle of the story, you can, but you kind of need the rest of the dominoes to get the full domino effect.
Yeah, that's I kind of do. That is one thing that kind of like rustles my jimmies a little bit. Is a lot of retellings of the trials almost always start with literally the three girls at the very beginning, and it's like, oh yeah, it was just it was just a very strict lifestyle. So it wasn't just that it was a strict lifestyle they were living. There was like literal centuries of backstory to why and like their mindsets that set this kind of stuff off. It wasn't just, oh, every one day everyone just decided to start hanging each other.
Everybody
Nah.
just went crazy one day. Anyway, like, no,
Yeah,
well,
well, yeah.
you have to know
Well,
the
we got that
history
out
of
of our
it.
systems. Yeah. Where did you want to go from here, though, in regards to talking about the witch trials? Because how much of like do you want to just go off on the various things, people, and stuff, or my opinion on them, or what have you?
I mean,
Or also, did you have any questions up to this point as well?
I'm personally good. Does anybody in the chat have any questions? Because I was gonna say I'm pretty good with just starting up with the, like, okay, so now we have the history and the context of what happened. Let's go into what happened. You know. But let me give a minute for chat
Yeah.
to, if anybody in chat has anything to tippity tappity out. Let's start with how this stuff started in the U.S. I agree.
Yeah.
Onwards to Salem.
Well, okay.
So we shall
Yeah,
go.
well-
We have our context. Let's get going.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, it's not. This isn't really how it started in the U.S. There were like spatterings of witch accusations, but nothing concrete. Salem was just the most well known because it lasted for like over a year, like 15 months or something, and like 200 people were sent to prison over this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. So in Salem Village in February of 1692, there were two little girls by the name of Betty Paris and Abigail Williams who were just having a little bit of a play date one day. They were nieces, no, rather, they were cousins, I should say, of Reverend Samuel Paris. Again, the guy whose one credential was everyone was willing to listen to him. One day, they just start having the strangest little changes in their personalities. Normally, they're very docile. Normally, they're very sweet. Suddenly, they are screaming at the top of their lungs, waking up the entire house in the morning, screaming, throwing things around, convulsing on the floor, swearing up and down that they are having visions of strange figures, animals walking all around, and a inky black man claiming to be the devil, saying that he has been granted their souls. So, not the best way to wake up on a winter morning.
Oh, and imagine how terrifying that is for the parents.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, naturally, they're kind of trying to stop this, but they can't do it. Eventually, after a few minutes of it ongoing, they try good old prayer circles, and lo and behold, that does actually seem to make it stop. They at least calm down. Until later that day when it starts all over again. This happens, I think, over the course of 3 to 4 days before eventually something new occurs. One of the girls, I believe it was actually Abigail, Oh no, it was Betty. I believe it was Betty Paris was the one who first made the accusation, claiming that the Devil Ink Man claimed that he was given their souls by witches, and claimed that the witches who had done it were three, or rather two servants and one slave to the Putnam household. Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba were the names of the three people formally declared for witchcraft for the first time in Salem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, fun fact about how pre-colonial laws worked: children's witness testimonies weren't usually accepted as evidence. But that wasn't going to stop, the ever concerned people of Salem. So, what do you think they did in response?
Well, I mean, I know during the time period, like, people were very well, so you have the tension in the time, so of course everybody is gonna go to kind of like the worst case scenario.
Yeah, they go with the worst case scenario, but even beyond that, they hit us with the good old fashioned prisoner's dilemma in real life. Unironically, they they gather up all three women, bring them each to different rooms, and they just lie to them. They say, you know, we need some kind of evidence because something's happening to these girls. They say it's you and these two other women. And these two other women have already said you also did it. So would you declare that you believe these other women also did it as well? Because we can probably give you protection if you can point to them having done, the actual possessing. If there's no evidence against you besides their words, and if they're witches, well, they're liars, naturally. And it works literally. Literally, all three women end up saying, "Yep, the other two totally were witches. I've seen them." And oh, whoopsie, all three of them have confirmed that the other two were witches, meaning all three of them have multiple people, multiple adult women declaring them to be witches. Well, time to go to prison.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
remember this specifically because also you have to keep in mind, like, so during this whole tension of the time and the religious situation that it is, like, these women are scared for their lives. So what else are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. They went along with it. Actually, fun fact: Tituba to so okay. Slight spoiler. Good for Tituba because she actually survives the longest because Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne were both killed. Tituba never actually was. They kept putting it off because since she was a second class citizen and was technically legally Putnam's property, and he got so focused on all the other accusations, they just kept putting off her execution until they all had to be acquitted. And so she was actually sold off to a different family. One of these other families that she was eventually sold to, she flat out told them, "Oh yeah, no, my old master Putnam literally threatened to beat me if I didn't accuse the other women."
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it wasn't literally just, "Oh yeah, all this kind of stuff." And unfortunately, here's the unfortunate part about when talking about the Salem witch trials is it was just such a kerfuffle, everything going all over the place, that it's hard to really find a timeline. It was literally just 15 months of every single day or every other day someone else was being accused of being a witch. It changed after, I believe the girl was named Elizabeth Proctor or Elizabeth Bassett, whatever her name was. She was 17, and she, like, a few days after Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba were sent to prison, she also started having fits. Since she was 17, she was over the colonial age of majority and thus could give witness testimony.
Hmm.
And so from there, it was literally just this group of, I think, like 15 girls all across Salem just started having fits. They started screaming, throwing things every which way, and then they would claim one of the people in town was making them do it. It was all very hoopla, all very, like, all over the place.
Yeah.
Even going back to the museum, they don't really give a chronology. It was all just a hodgepodge of different individuals. Like they'll bring up the Putnams. They'll bring up what was his name? Not not I can't remember who was the guy who oversaw the legal proceedings. I think it was like
Oh man, I can't remember. I always just called
I'm
him the judge
yeah,
of the time. I can't remember
yeah,
his.
I know. I can't remember. Hang on, let me double check. Salem
Well, also like I think the
Hawthorne, Hawthorne, William
Hawthorne.
Hawthorne, John Hawthorne rather, John Hawthorne. Yeah, he was the guy who was in charge.
See, and this is like the perfect example of like, oh my god, the term, but basically satanic panic of the time. This is
Oh yeah,
witch
yeah,
panic of the time of like, oh my god, I'm having fits. It's a witch. Oh my god, you're having fits. It's a witch too. It's and everybody just panics. So of course there's like a really rough timeline because everybody's just kind of panicking.
yeah. There in retellings and like museums and other kind of things, they do tend to focus on three individuals or three of the accusees consistently. But unfortunately, it's not because of anything kind of like that they themselves did. It's more as a representation of what they want the readings of the witch trials to be, at
Yeah.
least that I found. For like, because Tituba is actually one of the ones that is constantly remembered. They use her as a representation of like, she literally couldn't do anything. Not only was she a woman, she was a slave. She was legally not considered like on par with everybody else. And when Proctor told her to go in for her confession, he literally said he would just beat her if she didn't confess. So it was used to highlight the vulnerability of a lot of the people who were in it.
Yeah.
Even my own teacher actually got this part of history wrong because she said Tituba was the only one who got accused. But no, both Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne were arguably in similar situations. They were serving girls to the Putnam family. The Putnams naturally controlled basically their entire income and livelihood, and they were women themselves. While, yes, legally they had more protections than Tituba, they still also were second-class citizens in a lot of ways. And worst of all, they were killed. Their deaths set off a lot more of these kinds of things
Yeah.
because they were some of the few like death penalties that were used against women at the time. So, um, interestingly, for my personal like family thing, Rebecca Nurse is another person who is often remembered, usually to as a representation that nobody is safe. Because now I can give you a little bit of the hodgepodge difficulties that was Rebecca Nurse's trial.
Yeah.
So it should be noted Rebecca Nurse was remarkably old. She was in her 70s by this point. She was deaf in one ear. Fun fact, actually, my mom, I think actually, no, my grandma thinks the reason I specifically heard a man yelling when I heard the name Rebecca yelled was because he was literally yelling for Rebecca to hear him because she could, going by the transcripts of the trial, she had to get questions multiple times because she couldn't hear them the first time they were asked.
Poor thing.
But the thing that was more notable about her was she was like a matriarch of the entire town. She was a remarkably like faithful church-going woman. Even though she was a widow, she basically was active in the town. Most people there, given their age, had known her since they themselves were children, and she had never been anything but sweet to them. She had always had good relations. So when she was finally declared for witches, it was actually the first time that a large portion of Salem said, no, that can't be true. Fun fact, I found his name because I actually found the piece of paper I was looking for. John Hawthorne, the prosecutor on these witch trials, who basically every single time was the biggest supporter of the girls and said he basically felt anyone accused of witchcraft was a witch and it was just a matter of getting them formally declared. He actually said before her trial in his opening statements, I hope that this is nothing more than a big mistake for your sake and for all of ours.
Ugh.
So it was pretty notable that she was well beloved in town. So beloved, in fact, that one of the character witnesses was one of her neighbors. She was brought in because she had actually declared that she believed, or had told other people rather, she believed Rebecca Nurse was a witch decades ago.
Mm.
So naturally, she was brought in to say, "Hey, what about that?" And when she gave the final, her retelling of things, she said, "I recant everything I said back then. It was just I was an angry woman. I didn't mean it. What had happened was Rebecca's husband and this woman's husband had gotten into an argument over some pigs,
Oh,
and
of course, the
later
pigs.
that day." Yeah, yeah, exactly. They were getting they'd been in the husband had Rebecca's husband had sold this man some pigs, and apparently they weren't to the quality or to the breeding capabilities as the other man wanted, and so they got into an argument. The other man later that day keeled over and died. So after that happened, this woman said she believes that Rebecca must be a witch. She cursed her husband and killed him. But in the quote unquote modern times of the witch trials, when being asked, you've already declared her being a witch. Do you still believe she is? Like, there's more evidence now. She says, no, no, I was simply an angry widow. I lost my husband and I was lashing out. I She hadn't spoken to Rebecca since the day this happened, but she still said, I do not believe she has it in her to be a witch.
Yeah, there's no
And
way.
yeah, and remarkably, the judge agreed because Rebecca Nurse was the first person to be declared innocent of the being a witch after she'd been accused by this group of girls. Only for all of the girls to immediately start screaming, writhing, throwing things throughout the courtroom, punching people, declaring that Rebecca was sending imps and goblins and other things to attack them. And so, because the Continental, the Constitution hadn't been ratified yet, and double jeopardy was not something you couldn't do, they just had a retrial. And
Yep.
wouldn't you know it, this time she was found guilty. And so she was executed, unfortunately.
Which is just so sad. I mean, look, the deaths that happened just were, it's a tragedy, period. But to have be found innocent and then to go right back to a trial and be found guilty, I can't imagine that. That would be devastating.
Yeah, and as I said, it's usually historically now it's used as an example of when these kinds of events happen, no one is safe. Everyone in town swore that Rebecca was like one of the most pious people they knew, but they didn't stop her from being executed. Though there is kind of a nice, I guess, bittersweet ending in this regard, which I did learn going through my family history. Rebecca's son actually after she was executed, because being executed for this kind of stuff, you were just thrown into a ditch
Yeah.
and kind of left in a mass grave. He actually broke the law and broke their spiritual beliefs and grabbed her body out of the pit the night after she got thrown into it, so that he could go give her a proper burial on their homestead. You could actually visit her grave on the Nurse homestead just outside of Salem.
Oh, that's so sweet. I mean, oh, that's so
Yeah.
sweet.
A son's love for his mama.
Yeah.
And the final named victim, who is often remembered, is, as AR Gamma pointed out, Giles Corey. Giles was he wasn't the best person. He was a career criminal. He'd been on probation multiple times. No one liked him, but he did go out like a champ. He refused to give a declaration. So he wouldn't say he was innocent or guilty of being a witch, because, fun fact, if he said that he was guilty, like he admitted to it, he'd lose all of his land. That's kind of something that was never really mentioned in a lot of these stories with the witch trials. Being declared a witch meant you lost all of your legal possessions. So men and their families, like any man who there was like 5 men who was found guilty and killed for being witches, their families ended up destitute. That's kind of something that's not really mentioned all that much.
Oh yeah.
Well,
That's a good
Corey,
point.
he didn't want to lose. He didn't want to lose all his land by either saying he was a witch and like declaring himself guilty, or he'd seen what happens. Everyone says they're innocent, and then somehow everyone is found guilty. So he just decided, no, I'm not going to say one way or the other.
It
So
doesn't matter.
the good old Puritans decide, hey, we're gonna try some of that their advanced interrogation techniques, and so they just start pressing him. They start like putting 2 slabs in between him, and like putting rocks on top of him, telling him like say innocent or guilty, and his response is just keep saying more weight to kind of like
Oh yeah.
goad them.
I remember
Um,
that.
yeah.
Look,
Well, here's another kind of fun thing. Oh,
how
sorry, what?
honorable though of like I can't, like, you're gonna kill me anyway. There,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He doesn't care.
you're gonna kill me anyway, whether or not I say I'm not or I am. you're gonna kill me anyway, so let me go ahead and try to save my family as best as I can, and just go ahead, whatever.
Well, I mean that might be putting a little bit more honor on it because he was still kind of a jerk who didn't pay his child support. He just didn't want the people accusing him of being like a witch to get any of his property. It really wasn't because he cared that much about his kids or his ex-wife.
Okay, that's a good
But
point.
anyways, yeah, anyways, so here's a fun little tidbit you get to hear when you go on Ghost Tours in Salem. They like to say that Giles Corey actually cursed the town of Salem itself, or at least specifically the sheriff of
Mm.
Salem. Um, because they always just say, "Oh yeah, he said a curse at the very end of his trials," and wouldn't you know it, since that day, every sheriff who has taken the office in Salem has suffered some sort of blood disease or heart attack, and that's what took him out of his commission. I would like to point out it seems kind of stupid for him to go that far, not putting in a declaration whether or not he was a witch, only to immediately before dying say that he's gonna do something that is literally only something a witch would do. So I am actually looking into it. There is no like actual corroborating evidence that he did, other than like folk tales. Like people said, "Oh yeah, I was there when it happened, and he cursed the sheriff," kind of stuff.
But also, like,
So
that would be a badass way to go out, though. I'm not gonna lie.
it would no. The funniest part was when I was a kid, I actually got confused, especially since I couldn't find any evidence of him saying the curse. So I thought they literally just confused the word like a curse word for a curse. So I thought he literally said "ah fuck" and then died, and everyone said, "Oh, he cursed." And then they were like, "Oops, so I guess he's a witch." But again, Giles Corey is often used as again proof that during these sorts of events, it doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty. They'll just find a way to get rid of you because the guy literally wouldn't say if he thought he was innocent or guilty, and they still found a way to kill him.
I'm sorry, I am having like a moment because that is such a funny thing though of ah fuck.
Oh yeah,
But like
yeah, yeah.
just
No,
the like to add in the sheriff thing, it was like, oh yeah, he cursed the sheriff. Ah fuck you, man, and then died.
yeah, I know. Yeah, the sheriff's literally standing over him with a clipboard, just trying to be like, "Damn it! It's been 3 days. Are you a witch or not?" He goes, "Ah!" And then his lungs literally collapse from the weight, and he dies. And everyone like is looking on. And he just goes, "Well, I mean,
It's a
we
mental
send him
image
to
for sure.
God, and God, yeah, God will sort him out in the end, I suppose." And
Oh my god, that's funny. I'm sorry. That is great. Love that. That is a
yeah,
great version.
yeah.
I'm gonna keep that.
And unfortunately, while I'd like to have some optimism when it comes to the Salem witch trials, they did not end because people came to their senses. They ended because of nepotism.
Yeah.
This because while all this was happening, the British were still like, "Hey, so we still got this colony." Keep in mind, James II by this point had died, so there were no more. Or rather, the next king was a Protestant and an Anglican. So they were like, "Okay, we can restart this charter with those Puritans across the ocean now." And then they took notice and they said, "Oh, hey, what the hell is going on?" Because funnily enough, witch trials had fallen out of popularity in Europe by the late 1690s.
Yeah, people were coming to their
So to
senses.
see yeah, so to see it happening over there in Europe was kind of embarrassing for the current monarchy because it was, I believe, it was the co-monarchy of Will the First and Mary the Third, something like that. But yeah, so they eventually sent a governor back over to reestablish a sort of overarching authority and secular law, rather than just letting literally any judge and preacher who happened to have the most popular support of the town make the rules. And while he was trying to kind of formulate things, when you know it, one of the Salem girls declares his wife to be a witch, and he says, "No, she isn't." And they try and say, "Well, we still need to try her for her witchcraft." He says, "No, you're not." And yeah, everyone was like, "Wait, that was an option? We could have just done that." Slowly but surely, there was by this point there was still like I think 50 women who had been accused and needed to go to trial. But wouldn't you know it, suddenly after the governor said, "Hey, we're gonna be reestablishing British legal practices over here, so you need to provide more evidence of besides witness testimony of this." So naturally, the governor's wife being accused is seen as the end of the trials. The trials themselves continued on. It was just no one else got convicted
Yeah.
because suddenly everyone was just like, "Oh well, we got to do what the governor says," and well, we can't just keep believing what these children are saying anymore. And oh look, we literally have no evidence besides them saying that it happened. And just to make me personally really pissed off, that Bennett girl from earlier, soon after, see, remember, their word was essentially law for the longest time, for the better part of a year. So naturally, they were kind of worried, like, hey, girls, so the governor needs more proof than just you saying these weird things are happening. Couldn't you provide some of that maybe? Also, hey, you've been swearing up and down on literally the Bible saying that these things are happening and yet they aren't actually happening. Your souls are still here even though like 12 witches have been let go and nothing bad's been happening to the town otherwise. Could you maybe explain what's going on here? And literally the girls are just kind of like, well, we needed to have fun, you know, girly time. We were getting kind of bored.
I mean,
I'm
it's
being
really boring
facetious,
over
but
here. So,
yeah, no, I am being facetious about it. But yes, when there was a trial to try and like figure out, hey, did you just wrongfully accuse like a bunch of 50 women? And they're just like, 50? Try 250 there, buddy. And yes, Elizabeth Bennet's official statement as like the 17-year-old, the oldest of the girls in this group, was we needed to have our fun. It was simply an entertainment, and people would listen to us.
and
And
we have blood on our hands.
and yeah, and they literally all admitted that yeah, they were lying the whole time. The only one, funnily enough, the only one who to her dying day insisted that it actually happened was Abigail Williams, one of the girls who originally started it all, who was like 11 at the time.
Mm.
She is perhaps the only one that I'm willing to believe the belief that it was ergot poisoning. Basically, back then, rye bread would sometimes get a bacteria on it whose chemical makeup was indistinguishable from LSD. So it was a notable phenomenon that sometimes stale or old rye bread, when eaten by people, would cause them to have intense hallucinations. Basically, a very massive drug trip. And so there has been a working theory that at the very least, the Betty Paris and Abigail Williams fits that they were having those couple of days were initially an actual thing that happened to them. They were just suffering from a very bad drug trip. But given for one that Betty Paris later admitted that yes, even if that first thing was the poisoning, she did accuse other women of being witches when she did make them up. It was just supposed to be a game she was playing with these other older girls. Abigail Williams, for some reason, insisted from the rest of her life that it actually did happen, and everything she at least said was true, even as all the other girls admitted that no, it wasn't.
See, and that's my curiosity is I could totally see ergot poisoning for sure, but also, there's plenty of people. Sorry, my alarm went off. There's plenty of people in the world who have bad reactions to drugs. So I'm wondering if she wasn't having a really bad trip and maybe it set off a seizure. If we're going to talk about
Yeah,
like the real world effects of that, and then that makes her think that no, this is real. This is what happened to me. I had a seizure because of a witch, not because of, well, we don't have the science for this yet. So she didn't know. And then you have to add on the peer pressure and then the just having fun, hashtag girly things. And then they play on this satanic panic kind of vibe, the witch panic vibe, and it just spirals
yeah,
and turned into people losing their lives.
yeah, literally dying. So I've never really gotten over the fact that they were just like, oh yeah, well, we had to have fun. It's like, really? Like,
Really?
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 Yeah, so I understand. I understand. I'm arguably too close because it was literally my ancestor that this happened to, and not appreciating the mortal crisis, the crisis of mortality, rather, that they inadvertently gave me.
Yeah.
But I can find sort of some solace in that outside of Abigail Williams and Betty Paris, they all basically lived the rest of their life in shame. They actually left Salem town and were never heard from again. Most of them were assumed to have taken different names and married under different names because they couldn't. Everyone knew that they had lied, and so they needed to start again, fresh.
Yeah. No, because I mean, how could you? The haha, sorry, it was just a game that ended in people dying. Whoopsie.
Yep. Whoopsie doopsie.
Yeah, you're never gonna live that down. Never ever gonna live
Never,
that down.
never, never, never. Yeah. Salem itself in the modern day, I got mixed feelings about. I admit that when I was younger, I flat out hated the place. I saw it as profiting off of the pain. Um, Hydra, real quick. Who are some of the more prominent accused of the side? Literally, we again, it was a case of literally we already kind of went over them. The three most commonly remembered of the accused are Tituba, Rebecca, and Giles, because again, it's mostly what they represented more so than who they were within the community, and basically anyone in the community was on fair game. The most notable like positional person who was accused was the governor's wife, because literally this was like an official from Britain whose wife was supposed to be like an actual member of nobility, a member of the House of Lords, effectively.
If I
And lo and behold, she was the only one who got no, she didn't.
Yeah, she got the nuh rule. No. If I remember correctly, a lot of the people who were accused at this time, it was basically any woman who was single, who was older, who had a pet, who walked around sometimes. Like,
It was literally Heinrich Kramer's mentality of if it's a woman, she's a witch kind of
yeah,
stuff.
it,
Yeah, there's some argument. There's been some argument that maybe there was also some interpersonal familial politics of like the Putnams versus the Porters, like
yeah.
how many cousins slash descendants of this one person were targeted over like wanting land disputes. Because when you know it, certain people got certain land off of a death or two, but at the same time, again, a porter was one of the girls who was in this group. It seems kind of weird that she'd be okay, like working together with some of the girls getting them killed. So it really was. There's an argument to be made that maybe, yeah, for selfish reasons, a couple of the accusations were made, but I don't think it was a grand conspiracy by these literal teenage girls to just kill everyone, especially because so many people were accused. Literally, no one's like family was without a witch in it functionally.
Which I was gonna say, wasn't Rebecca Nurse at the time? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're obviously the expert in this situation. Wasn't she a widow at the time, I believe?
Yes, she was. She was seven. Like I said, she was 70 and a widow. Her son was supposed to be the one who was watching her.
Yeah, so I believe,
That's why he was responsible for burying her when he grabbed her
yeah.
body.
No, and I believe I had heard that like she had been accused, like she had had the eye looked at her at this point because solely because she was a widow and she was older.
Yeah,
So,
no. Again, that's mostly because that was the only thing they could pin her with.
yeah.
Everyone else insisted that she was like a church going woman. She was, all this kind of good stuff. They couldn't grab her on, she's spending weird time with animals or she's going into the forest. So all they could say was she looked at me meanly and she's an old woman without a husband.
Yep, there you go. Gamma says one of my
Uh,
old history teachers said something along the lines of if you said who made you a witch, they move on to that person and leave you alone. So there was an incentive to accuse someone else, or else you'd be deemed patient zero, essentially. I've also heard that a lot of like, well, keep in mind these women were basically left on like taken from their lives, put into a basically a a shed, locked in a shed, starved and beaten and told, "Tell me who it is, or else you're next." Well, okay, I'll say that it's this one. Then can I go now, please?
Yeah, exactly. That it ties more into the theory that there was land disputes that were really doing it, or that there was corruption, and like some of the not just the girls, but like some of the officials were trying to get back at certain people. It wasn't actually a belief that like you could just accuse somebody else and it would jump over to you. It was if these group of girls who were having these what were called hysterics or these fits accused you, you essentially had to prove you weren't. If you named somebody else, they might give you some leniency, but ultimately you would be sent to prison, and it was just a matter of time of waiting. The only reason that only 20 like people or 25 people ended up dying was just because they couldn't get to them in time because the prison system was so chock full of people.
Yeah.
Hydra. The unfortunate thing in regards to that is not really. They were, again, as I said, they were painfully effective in how they wanted to do killings. So it was just a gallows tree. There was a very strong oak tree just outside of town. It was strong enough that one of the branches could hold up a human rather easily. So about 19 of the people accused, or the 19 that were killed, were just hung. I do know there was a couple others who just died in prison awaiting their execution because of just the dirty facility.
Oh
And they
yeah.
just died of like disease and stuff like that. If you wanted something that was more like strange, there were actually two dogs that were executed for being deemed familiars of witches.
Not the dogs.
Not the
Not the
dogs.
dogs. No, and that's that is just one of those things where it's just the whole situation was just such a weird environment, and I feel bad for that governor coming in. I can't imagine that walking into this town and being like, "All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and get this town straightened back up." What do you mean we're killing people?
What do you mean 200 of our citizens are in prison right now? That's like half the population.
What do you mean?
Not really.
What do you mean
Yeah.
19 people have died? By what?
If yeah, by what? What do you mean? What do you mean witches? What um
Not my
uh,
wife. I don't know
uh
what you're doing. No,
yeah,
everybody sit
not my wife.
down. Sit down. Untie the noose. Sit down.
Yeah. It's literally it's like the Monty Python sketch. It's just like, why do you think she's a witch again? Oh, she turned me into a newt. I got better.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is why you keep an eye on your local HOA. Yes.
Yes, exactly. The HOA are where the real witches are now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. If I had one gripe, like I said, I used to really hate it, but now I've kind of like my new mentality when it comes to modern day Salem is I'd rather something be well remembered and profited off of than like be quote unquote pure and be forgotten.
Yeah.
So like I'm okay with a lot of how Salem runs things if in the end of the day they're trying to teach people about these kinds of things so they don't get forgotten or lost to the annals of history, so like that. That said, I do feel like they are kind of like what we were mentioning earlier. They've taken to kind of fudging, kind of playing around with some of the realities of the history. For example, they once had like here's a fun little fact about modern day Salem. It is a hub for Wiccans specifically.
Yeah.
There's a lot of but here's the thing, Wiccans as an identity or as like a branch of witchcraft have not existed for much longer than the 1950s. Some of their practices were taken from earlier sort of groupings, but as a formal practice or as a tradition, it really got its start in a lot of the, I guess, like the not the hippie, but like the pre-hippie sort of spiritual loosenings of the post-war America. But because a lot of them congregated in Salem due to the history of it being the most well-known place for witchcraft in the U.S., there's a lot of like very subtle, very unspoken pro-Wiccan rewritings of history.
Yeah.
Because like fun fact, like I was during one of my repeat visits after the fourth grade to Salem. We got to sit in on a stone blessing ceremony from Wiccan as like a, oh, hey, we're gonna demystify witchcraft so that we don't be prejudiced like that, and kind of learn they aren't evil, demon worshiping, blah blah blah. Well, here's the thing: they weren't doing this kind of stuff back then. Even like, fun fact, Tituba actually did practice voodoo. That's one of the reasons people assume that the people of Salem were willing to see her as a witch, because she did practice something that is considered witchcraft these days. But I have never seen anyone in Salem give any kind of history or modern day practices of voodoo. I feel like that would be due more to the whole demystifying this kind of stuff, when that was one of the things that supposedly set it off. But instead, they're going to say, oh, yeah, let's look and see how these Wiccans do thing. Maybe look that over. Another thing was they have like a little display, two statues that's like a real witch versus a fake witch. And the fake witch is, again, green skin, Wicked Witch of the West, talking about, I fly on a broom and I have a big cauldron. What will Hollywood think of next? But as I have displayed here, these things literally weren't Hollywood. They were what people believed witches were, due to how Kramer had written them down for literally centuries. And all this, oh, sorry, what?
I was gonna say, as a Wiccan myself, I was raised as the difference between what people are and the TV witches is what I was always raised as. The stereotypical green skin, mole,
the green skin,
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but no, but that was another thing that Hydra, that I was getting to. The quote unquote real witch was, again, basically just practiced as a Wiccan, when really their practices weren't what the Salem people were doing, or could even have been confused for what some of the Salem women were doing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of one of those things where, like, I'm not against demystifying the practices and at least like not doing all this demonization, but I'd rather you do it with the actual historical true things. And I feel you're not doing that when you're bringing about stuff that was a bit more modern. But of course, they don't really think about that kind of stuff, because a lot of their benefactors, a lot of people giving money to these museums, are themselves practicing Wiccans. So it ironically has that kind of like, it's literally those kinds of rewriting of history we were talking about with elementary school, where it's happening all over again, just with a different group kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that is in and of itself, it's an interesting topic, because
yeah.
demystifying these things and like trying to explain stuff, for like trying to, I guess, take the mysticism out of it, and it's like, okay, well, Rebecca Nurse, she was old. Yep.
Yeah.
She might have had the sun in her eye and looked at somebody at that time.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
Obviously, death sentence. I think it's a good. I think that my opinion on modern Salem is that I think it's a good thing to have the education around, as to avoid it in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you learn about it, then you can go, maybe we should use our brain and not just go off of instinct. Huh?
Maybe we should just say, oh yeah, I saw this person do it, but they didn't. Well, that person said they saw they do it, so I guess they did do it. Literally Twitter, literally the entire like YouTube landscape. Oh, I saw someone say they did it, so they did it.
Obviously. Okay, well, let's have some more evidence. Let's, what's your proof? Let's talk about these things. Let's not just go off half-cocked, shall we?
No, but you gotta understand, that thing that happened over there, that was AI. Don't believe your lying eyes. Listen to what the officials say.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff, literally.
Yeah, exactly. What are you gonna believe? Your lying eyes or the words coming out of my mouth? Clearly.
Yeah, come on. That's actually, though, most of what I had set up to say during stream. Do you have any more final questions, or does anyone in chat have anything else they want specified or talked about?
Personally, I love Hydra's comment of a real witch versus a fake witch versus a sandwich.
Yeah, the tastiest one is the last one.
Yes. If see if anybody else has anything, and then I think we actually went over the 2 hour mark, which is fabulous. I've only
Yeah, we
done one
yapped, we
other
yapped, and then
stream
some.
that was 2 hours. Actually, so this is I think this might actually be my longest stream. So thank you, Marshall, for that record as well, on top of being my first talk.
No, okay, no, I was happy to be here. This was very fun.
Yes. All the yapping for sure. All right.
Yes.
Let me see what we got. See about if there's anybody to raid out to, and then I think we might be ending our night. Oh, it looks like Kiwi is live. How you feel about going to
Oh,
Kiwi?
hey. Yeah, I'll go bring that up.
Yeah, I think a lovely weeby it would be a great thing to end off on.
Yeah,
Alrighty,
yeah,
y'all.
yeah.
Well, I believe we're gonna go ahead and head on out. Go ahead and do Moth and Skelly raid. If I could type words.
Oh, she's doing Dark Souls.
Yeah, starts. All right, y'all.
All right, have a good night, everybody.
Have a great night, and we're gonna go ahead and switch on over to our screens and enjoy the weeby.
Souls to make myself mad. I don't know how far we'll get today, but it'll be fun. We good? I'm glad you're good. I'm glad you're good. I know you guys were yapping a whole lot, so if you feel like you need to